When George Danzig arrived late to his statistics class at UC Berkeley, he copied two equations from the chalkboard, assuming they were the week's homework assignment. A few days later, he handed in the solutions and mentioned they were slightly harder than usual. His professor was stunned. Those equations weren't homework. They were famously unsolved statistics problems. Danzig had solved them because he didn't know he was supposed to find them impossible. We often create friction by arguing for our limitations. As author Richard Bach noted, once you convince yourself of a limit, you effectively own it. Danzig succeeded because the idea of failure wasn't part of his dataset. He didn't have to overcome the belief that the math was unsolvable. He just focused on the work that needed doing. Our culture tends to treat raw physical labor as the only true driver of success, assuming that high achievers simply work harder than everyone else. But visualization works like a blueprint. Instead of the chaotic trial and error you see on the left, it organizes the path on the right, establishing the sequence for the build before the work actually begins. Without this mental plan, effort often becomes cyclical. You end up wasting energy on tasks out of order, like trying to install a roof before the walls have been framed. When you focus on a specific goal, your brain initiates neuroplasticity. Neurons physically stimulate and form new connections, literally altering the way you think to match the outcome you're picturing. But there is a vital distinction here. This isn't just daydreaming. Passive fantasy is a different cognitive habit entirely. The data shows a divide in achievement. While active visualizers sit at the top, people who only daydream actually perform lower than those who do not visualize at all. For these structural connections to take hold, the brain seems to require something more than a passing thought. It needs a positive expectation of a result, a biological factor that can be measured in a lab. A study at Columbia University tracked patients in antidepressant trials and found that placebos, completely inert pills, triggered improvement rates nearly equal to the actual medication. The patients' belief that they were receiving help forced their bodies to initiate a genuine biological response. Their brains accepted the outcome of healing as a fact. Jim Carrey famously applied this principle in his own life. In 1983, while he was still a struggling unknown performer, he wrote himself a check for $10 million and carried it in his pocket for a decade until he actually earned it. When you hold on to an unwavering belief, you prime your brain to treat a future result as an inevitability. You stop looking for excuses and start looking for the path. However, visualization only works if it stays grounded. If your mental blueprint is detached from your actual skill level, it becomes a tool for delusion rather than progress. This is the Dunning-Kruger effect. It identifies a cognitive bias where novices drastically overestimate their competence, precisely because they lack the experience to know what they don't know. Conversely, true experts often go the other way. Because they see the complexity of the task, they tend to underestimate their capabilities, assuming that if it's easy for them, it's easy for everyone. To build a functional blueprint, you have to find your real position on this curve. Only with an objective self-assessment can you map out the manageable steps needed to close the gap between where you are and where you want to be. To see how visualization translates into results, researchers at Dominican University tracked hundreds of participants across different planning styles. The baseline success rate for a mental goal is 43%. But look at the difference when you add friction. By writing the goal down, setting concrete action commitments, and sharing progress, that success rate rises to 76%. Moving a goal from a thought to an external shared commitment increases the probability of success from less than half to over 3/4. It transitions the neural pathway into a measurable obligation. The final step is a technique called the mind movie. Most people make the mistake of only visualizing the trophy or the finish line, but the mind movie covers the entire timeline. You have to visualize the daily repetition, the boredom of typing 1,500 words a day, or the physical strain of the training. You rehearse the mundane grind as much as the final success. This provides the cognitive resilience needed for the real world. By visualizing a process, you build the patience and focus required to endure the friction of actually doing the work.